Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining our regular weekly talk about the climate and ecological emergency. There's someone else over there. I'm Lou from XR Wandsworth, and I'm facilitating this talk tonight. Just to briefly introduce ourselves, we are ordinary people. We are NHS workers, grandparents, IT consultants, teachers, school children. Basically, we're your neighbours and we're terrified for our future. The talk you're going to hear tonight is Extinction Rebellion's official talk about the facts of the climate emergency. It has been devised and researched thoroughly by scientists and experts to help us explain and understand where we are. There is some content that is not suitable for under 16s. So amongst the terrible news cycles we have at the moment, something that may have slipped your notice is some devastating data from the North and South Poles. Both the Arctic and Antarctic have registered temperatures way above normal levels, 30 degrees above in the Arctic and 40 degrees above in Antarctic. Climate scientists have described this as impossible and unthinkable. This is terrible news. So what can we do about this? How can we change the ending? To investigate this more, I'd like to introduce Pat, a teacher from Battersea, who has worked in education for many years, and it's our turn to be inspired by her. Over to you, Pat.
So good evening. Thank you very much for coming. So our presentation tonight, which we're presenting regularly at the moment, was originally called Heading for Extinction. We don't mince our words, but this evening we're going to take as the starting point the film Don't Look Up, which was released straight onto Netflix at Christmas. If you've seen it, it's quite easy to watch. There's a kind of crazy comedy disaster movie where no one takes effective action to avoid the catastrophic impact of a huge comet heading for Earth. So it's a disaster movie without a happy ending. So I'm going to slide share with you. I'll just get it going. And there they all are. They are actually looking up there for the poster. So it's the story of two scientists who are raising the alarm, and they are being mocked on talk shows and social media. They're not taken seriously by the president, who has other things on her plate, and so on. And let's think about the ending. As the comet hits and life on Earth is wiped out, Leonardo DiCaprio says the last line, which in fact he thought of just before the scene was shot, actually on set, and they decided to put it in. And he says, "The thing of it is, we really did have everything, didn't we?" Because we do. We have everything. Our beautiful planet is our gift, our life support system. Everything we need is here. The air we breathe, the food we eat, the water we drink, and the ground we live on. And it is our only one. We share this beautiful biosphere with a range of other species who live intertwined with us. And we do still have time, just about, to change the ending. Unfortunately, it is already happening in many places. Many countries are already suffering from mega high temperatures caused by climate change, which are causing drought and starvation. And this will be on a global scale unless we act within the next 8 years. In fact, some scientists are now saying the next 3 years. 3 to 8, it's still a very, very short window to act. After that, the scientists tell us the effects of climate change and ecological destruction will be cascading and they will be irrevocable. Just come back to you for a moment. So the film is a satire on the climate catastrophe. And that is a kind of slow motion disaster, but it is coming as surely as that fictional comet was heading for Earth. Reviews of Don't Look Up haven't been great. It's been called heavy-handed and unsubtle. But it is, in less than 3 months, the third most viewed film ever on Netflix. Do you know what? It's not subtle. But subtlety went out of the window in this crazy world of ours a long time ago. A world where rich countries turn their backs on poorer countries who suffer heat waves, floods, droughts, and starvation. Where businesses argue over whether saving the planet makes economic sense. Where international meetings like COPs draw 200 countries together and meet for 30 years without any perceivable progress. Where peaceful environmental activists are labelled thugs and criminals, but the rich and powerful continue happily to pump money into the businesses that are destroying our world just so they can get richer. You couldn't make it up, really. One of the main themes of the film is the complacency and the refusal to grasp the enormity of the problem. The president, played by Meryl Streep, is only excited by the publicity opportunities the crisis offers. George Monbiot, a Guardian journalist who has campaigned for the environment for almost 40 years, says the film was like seeing his whole adult life flash in front of him. And you can see, I just think that that description of being trapped behind a plate of glass is just so kind of like to the point. The scientists versus the politicians is one of the strands of this tragic narrative. And by that, I mean the real narrative, though of course it is paralleled in the film. So I hope it's okay if I start by telling you about the real life scientists, starting with the United Nations. So the 6th IPCC report on the science came out last August. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is a United Nations organization employing leading scientists from 60 countries who follow and report back centrally on all aspects of scientific investigation on climate change and environmental damage. It was started in 1990 and since then has been saying the same thing to governments, just louder and louder and louder. Global warming is caused by human activity. We need to limit temperatures. We are destroying the natural world. Climate collapse is coming. And each time there is a report, there is a flurry in the media which quickly fades away. This was from last August. You probably saw it. It lasted for a few days and then it faded away. What you're probably not aware is that another aspect of this IPCC report came out a couple of weeks ago and it passed completely unremarked because there was other very dramatic world news that just completely, well, I was going to say knocked it onto the back page. I don't think it was even on the back page. It is interesting, isn't it? Because this is catastrophic for the human race. And yet it's featured in a very, very light way in the media. I saw that there was some demonstrations in France at the weekend, and their media coverage is something like 1% about the climate crisis, and climate campaigners are saying, why do we not know about this? And I think, why is it not featured as much as COVID? It's a huge disaster. And it's coming down the line. But actually, in some places, it's already here. We don't join up the dots. Many countries currently suffering war and civil unrest are plagued by ever more terrible droughts and heat waves. And that is why their societies are breaking down. Syria, Afghanistan, Ethiopia, Yemen. We just have to sort of like join these dots up and realize that everything is interconnected. But let me come to the enormous subject of climate justice in a moment. So let me just stick with what the scientists are trying to tell us behind that plate of glass. That we are causing our beautiful planet irreparable damage. We are in a climate crisis caused by the burning of fossil fuels and the way that we use land. And we are in an ecological crisis caused by the growth in consumption by the rich minority. The impacts are serious now, they're getting worse. The science is clear and uncontroversial. Without drastic and rapid change now, many people in the world, including you, your grandchildren, your children, future generations, face catastrophe. And governments and corporations are knowingly not doing enough to halt the crisis. Instead, they are spreading delusional myths about net zero targets a long way in the future, while continuing to subsidize the fossil fuel industries and paying massive agricultural conglomerates to destroy the land. We are threatening the survival of a huge proportion of living creatures and plants, as well as ourselves. So I'm going to begin by talking about the crisis affecting the climate. So this graph shows how global average temperatures have been rising in tandem with atmospheric carbon dioxide. So you will see that it covers 2000 years along the bottom. The red line is CO2 in the atmosphere. Around the late 1700s, 1800, we have the industrialization of Britain and spreads out. So the industrial age begins and we start to burn fossil fuels, oil, gas and coal incrementally. And as we burn more of them, the temperature goes up. The CO2 goes up, which is the red line. The blue squiggly line is average temperatures year on year. And although they squiggle up and down a lot, you will see that it goes irrevocably upwards. So when we talk about 1.5 above pre-industrial levels, we are talking about the rise in temperature up the right-hand side. You can see 1.5 is about, oh, sorry, no, we're at 1.2, I'm pointing the wrong bit. We're about 1.1, 1.2 now. But we are going pretty vertically upwards. Call this the hockey stick graph sometimes, and I think it's quite a good description and pretty obvious. Basically, by putting the CO2 emissions from the fossil fuels into the atmosphere, we are kind of like making it more dense. A simile that just stays in my mind is it's like wrapping a duvet around the earth. It's not very scientific, but for me, it kind of encapsulates what is happening. So we're only at 1.1 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, as you can see from the top of the hockey stick. Best case scenarios put us at 2.4 degrees of warming by the end of the century. And worst case scenarios put us at 4 to 6 degrees above by the end of the century. And I will explain to you what the choices we have are. But first of all, let's just look at what is happening now at 1.1 degrees above pre-industrial levels. This is now. So we're already seeing 4 kind of main effects of the heating in the world at the moment. Top left, droughts. They're getting longer, they're getting hotter, they're getting more and more destructive. By 2025, the World Health Organization predicts 4 billion people will be suffering severe water shortages. So let me put that in a different way. In 4 years' time, the World Health Organization predict that half the global population will be suffering severe water shortages. Top right, we have a picture of storms. In other areas, too much water is a problem. A warmer atmosphere holds more moisture, it's more energy, it's more unstable. Bigger, more devastating hurricanes are linked to climate change. This image is of Karachi in 2019. And of course, we suffer floods, in the UK, in Europe, everywhere. Bottom left, the wildfires, the unprecedented wildfires that are breaking out all over the place. Siberia, the Amazon, California's burning, Australia. Pretty obvious which country this is from. This is a picture from the 2019 fire in Australia, around the east coast of Australia, which destroyed an area nearly the size of France and burned for over 6 months, and an estimated 3 billion animals, birds and reptiles burned to death. These fires are part of the extreme heat scenario in hot countries, longer, hotter, drier seasons. There was a lot of fuss when temperatures reached Canada and in Central Europe, top 40s heading towards 50 degrees centigrade. That is too hot, really, for human beings to survive. We can't survive outside for any length of time at that kind of temperature. We dehydrate too fast. It's too hot for livestock to live. It's too hot to grow crops. And if you think about it, you only need a devastating few very hot days to wither away a whole year's crops. So when it's not being melodramatic to say parts of the world are burning, they are, and it's spreading. Bottom right, sea level rise. Melting glaciers and ice sheets are causing sea level rise, and coastal floods are becoming more severe. It's accelerating, it's unprecedented, and we are reaching tipping points. Scientists are predicting that low-lying countries like Bangladesh and Vietnam, Indonesia, and cities such as Mumbai and Calcutta, and many more actually, will be so frequently underwater by 2050 that they will be unable to sustain the population. So that is why so many people are crying out for climate justice. The suffering being caused in the global south, and which will escalate, is so concentrated in countries which are least well equipped to deal with it, and they're usually not the ones causing it. Rich countries are causing this through their consumption and their comparative comfort. It is looking like the ultimate shameful, unjust event in human history. As we try to resolve our guilt over imperialism, colonization, and slavery, we are committing another huge racist crime by not taking responsibility for the catastrophe in our climate. I'll share again with you. If it will go. That was climate, but climate was only part of the problem, is only part of the problem. In addition to the climate, there is also a crisis in the biosphere, the ecology, the web of living beings that sustains us. Humans depend on a healthy natural environment for our well-being and survival. In 2019, a hard-hitting international scientific report, again from the United Nations, had these things to say about the impact of humans on the planet. That nature is declining globally at rates unprecedented in human history. Around a quarter of species are already threatened with extinction. Humans affect 3/4 of land, 2/3 of the oceans, and 3/4 of fresh water. And we leave little room for anything else. The chair of the organisation that produced the report said, quote, "We are eroding the very foundations of our economies, our livelihoods, food security, health and quality of life worldwide." Basically, we're trashing the planet. We are destroying habitats and trees. We are killing insects with pesticides which disrupt the food webs of nature. We are creating vast agricultural monocultures where nothing can live. We are polluting the air, the waters, we are warming the seas, and we are messing up the fragile ecosystems within them. We are at war with nature when we should be living in harmony with nature because we are part of nature. Most of the collapse in ecosystems that we are seeing currently has taken place in the last 50 years. Within my lifetime, those of us who are adults today came into a world still rich with biodiversity and natural landscapes. And what will we be handing on to our children and grandchildren? Well, a degraded and an infertile planet. So within the next 50 years, we are looking at a rise of at least 2 degrees. We're certainly not going to keep it to 1.5, I don't think. So let's imagine that it's 2050 and the world is 2 degrees warmer. Just take a moment to think about it. Will you be alive in 2050? How old will you be? Have you got a special young person in your life? Have you got somebody you know or a child? How old will they be? I'm a teacher. I think about how old kids in my classes will be. They'll be in the prime of their lives. But life, the way we are accustomed to thinking about it, will have ended. By 2050, with 2 degrees of warming, billions will be living in unbearable heat. Billions will be chronically short of water. Hundreds of millions will be living with constant flooding and the inundation of their homes and cities. There will be mass displacement of somewhere between 200 million and 1 billion people. This is by far the greatest movement of people ever in human history. We won't escape the damage in the UK. We'll have internal climate refugees. The world will be in chaos. Millions will starve to death because the crops in their lands will have completely failed. And global food shortages will massively impact UK food supplies as well. Next time you're in the supermarket, look where your food comes from. And all of the above will undoubtedly lead to conflict over resources. And that means war, more war. Okay, I've sledgehammered you with shocking information. This is the voice of the scientists who are screaming behind the glass. I think we're going to take a moment together to reflect and take notice of how everything we've just heard makes us feel. I'm going to leave this slide up just for a moment, a minute, just for us to just reflect and take some deep breaths. Okay, I'll come back to you now. I'm afraid so far nothing has worked. Remember the hockey stick graph? Here's the hockey stick bit of it, the hook of it. Have a look at how the CO2 has gone up and have a look at the timeline. 1971, Greenpeace was founded. 1988, the IPCC was formed and has been issuing reports. 2015, an agreement was made at the Paris Agreement, which was so amazing because it was agreed that we really did have to keep temperatures below 1.5 degrees to try and mitigate climate disaster. We're now in 2022 and we're still rising. Nothing is working. The scientists have been telling us it, the truth, evidencing it, researching it for over 50 years. What has happened? So let's now think about the politicians. I've talked about the scientists. Let's look at the politicians, and we might as well start with COP26. COP26 was held last November. The clue is in the name about why it failed, COP26. There have been happening annually since 1995. There's been 26 of them. Nothing's worked. We have slowed down the emissions slightly, but the atmosphere is still inexorably filling. So why did COP26 fail? Basically, because there is a glaring and terrifying shortfall in national pledges to cut their emissions. Each country offers an NDC, a nationally determined contribution, stating how much they can reduce their emissions. The aim being that put together, they add up to enough to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. But put together, the NDCs at the end of COP26 in the Glasgow Climate Pact, they would only limit temperature rise to 2.4 degrees if they are all implemented, which on past record is unlikely. We have big changes to make, big decisions to make, and at the moment, they are not being made. I think this is fairly self-explanatory. If I just give you a moment just to look at it, you can see that with substantial cuts in emissions, we can limit on the blue line to 1.5. But if we don't make any emissions, we're up at 4. The truth is looking as if we're going to be somewhere in the middle. Well, I don't know. I'm being optimistic, perhaps. Anyway, we do have to make these decisions, and it's catastrophic. 4 degrees of warming means pretty much the end of everything for us as a species. So, why aren't we doing it? Why isn't it headline news every day? At the heart of this is power and greed, self-interest and money, to be honest, pitted against those who don't have enough voice or power to complain. So who are the people and the businesses who are paralysing governments and threatening the future of life on Earth? Let's go back to the film. On the left is Mike Rylance in Don't Look Up. In the film, he plays a weird, obsessive billionaire CEO of a tech company who persuades the president not to explode the comet before it hits Earth, but to delay in order to mine the precious metals and minerals on it first. And of course, she goes for that. Why throw away a massive wealth opportunity, even if the risks are high? So there's been a lot of discussion about who the character of Sir Peter is based on. Rylance says he is an amalgamation of those people who have a messianic belief in profit, people so powerful that they hold governments in their pockets. So I did a little bit of Googling just for a few kind of like examples, and I don't know loads about it, but I just Googled, and there Elon Musk is at the top right there. Then I Googled the CEOs of Exxon and BP, the huge oil companies. I can't actually remember which one's which. They all look a bit the same. I also Googled the president of Barclays, and I think he's an outgoing president there. Barclays being one of the biggest European bank investors in fossil fuels. So these are the people that Sir Peter Isherwell is based on. Michael Mann, who's a world-leading climate scientist, said this. This is a really interesting quote that he said. He said, "The great tragedy of the climate crisis is that 7.5 billion people must pay the price in the form of a degraded planet so that a couple of dozen polluting interests can continue to make record profits. It is a great moral failing of our political system that we have allowed this to happen." It so is. 4 huge fossil fuel companies, Exxon, BP, Shell, and Chevron, have single-handedly contributed 10% of the carbon up there since 1965. 4 companies. And knowingly, I might add, they have the most highly paid scientists in the world working for them. They know exactly what they are doing. They have obfuscated, confused, greenwashed, and delayed, just like the tobacco companies did over the cancer risks from cigarettes. And there are another 28 fossil fuel companies who are responsible for another 68% of the world's toxic emissions. They are being bankrolled by our banks and hedge funds. If our City of London finance industry were a country, it would rank as the 8th highest emitter in the world. And bizarrely, our governments directly invest too. We have 8 years till the CO2 up there causes cascading climate impacts. Yet our UK government still invests and is continuing to invest in new oil and gas projects and coal projects. There's a coal project as well. It still invests more, far more in fossil fuel companies than renewable energy, still fails to curb the business as usual behavior of these huge businesses. Why? One word answer, money. Well, you can't eat money, as the saying goes. So, what can we do about this? I'm afraid to say that individual action is false hope at this late stage of the game. Of course, we do have a moral duty to try and live our lives mindfully, thinking about our impact on the environment. And we have to model a world where we can sustainably thrive. But the idea of the personal carbon footprint is actually a campaign dreamed up by BP with the advertising agency Ogilvy to put the responsibility for this crisis onto the individual, while they merrily carry on extracting huge amounts of oil and gas and making loads of money. It is a massive distraction, a greenwash to buy them more time. Let's be totally clear. We will never tackle the climate crisis with individual action alone. It is way out of control. We will never tackle the ecological crisis with individual action alone. Most CO2 is emitted on our behalf entirely outside of our control. And the major emission sources can only be controlled by governments. And governments have to listen to people. This is why, by far, the biggest thing you can do to tackle the climate and ecological crises is political engagement, because this has got to stop on a massive, massive scale. We have a small window of time to bring about real action before it's too late. And that is exactly what XR, Extinction Rebellion, is here to do. Because we are the citizens, you are the citizens, XR is the citizens. The people in this slide are my friends, they're our friends. Because we, the citizens, are the ones who can listen to the scientists. We can listen to the natural world, and we believe that another world is possible, and through action, we empower ourselves. So we are XR. We have been called the fastest growing startup in history. We changed the conversation about the climate and ecological emergency in just 3 years. 81% of UK citizens now know we are facing a climate emergency, which is up from just 25% in 2017. We use non-violent direct action as our tactic to pressure governments to act. And we are inviting you to join us in this. It does mean stepping out of our comfort zones. None of us want to be doing this. But for 50 years, Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, and many, many, many other campaigners have been working tirelessly to save us without succeeding. And now it's time for us to step en masse onto the streets to join them. Because when the rules don't work, they must be broken. We won't be the first ones to do so. In fact, breaking the rules in the name of a good cause has a long and noble tradition. It's been used successfully many times in the past. And these pictures are just 3 examples. Gandhi, obviously, on the left, organising Indian rebellion against British rule. On the right, we have Martin Luther King mobilising Americans to force changes to racially discriminatory laws. And in the middle, of course, the suffragettes. These people and the millions who surrounded them, they're regarded as heroes now. But at the time, they were often vilified as criminals because they broke the law. And the suffragettes particularly were mocked for what they were doing. Civil resistance, which is also called civil disobedience, or non-violent direct action, which is what Extinction Rebellion likes to call it, means this. It means normally law-abiding citizens breaking rules and laws as a way to force change in a system that is refusing to change. This is why actions are Extinction Rebellion's main tactic. And on April the 9th, next month, we begin our next rebellion in central London. Its kind of byline is, "We will not be bystanders." And it will target the fossil fuel industry directly because we refuse to be bystanders as it destroys our beautiful, beautiful world. But we can only do it if thousands, maybe millions, come out onto the streets to show their support. We need everyone there. It starts at Hyde Park at 10 a.m. on Saturday the 9th, Sunday the 10th, and the subsequent, the whole of the following week and subsequent weekends. Nelson Mandela said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." Okay, I'm just going to quickly talk you through the 3 main demands from XR. We've got 3 overall arching national demands, and then we have a specific one for this April. And it's important that you know how straightforward they are. Tell the truth. I mean, just tell the truth. This means the media and the government telling the kind of information that we've just covered in the first half of this talk. Everybody needs to be told about this in the same way that people were told about the threat from COVID. But there's been too many cover-ups, too many delays, too many looking aways or not looking ups. And I'm afraid the media are often complicit in that. Our second demand is to act now. Just get on with this. 50, 60 years later, and we're still in a climate emergency. Halt biodiversity loss and greenhouse gas emissions by 2025. At the moment, the target is 2050 in the UK. Far, far, far too late. It has to be immediate. We have to act now. And our third demand is for a citizens' assembly of ordinary people to decide how to address these issues. But their recommendations must be legally binding. They must be empowered. They would be commissioned and funded by the government, but independently organised and run, not part of XR, completely separate. But we need to move beyond the short-termism of politics, and we need to actually take back control. The aim is to strengthen our democracy. And then the April 2022 demand is, sorry, I just need to move my windows. Oh, sorry. Is stop all fossil fuel licenses, stop fossil fuel subsidies, stop funding new fossil fuel exploration, invest in renewable energy sources so we can live. We don't need all this oil and gas and coal. We have the means. It's crazy. We have the technology with renewable energy, but the investment and the political will is not there. I'm aware this talk is an awful lot about what we don't want and the horrors of what is happening, and not enough about what we do want. Well, this is what we want. Natural, renewable energy resources can save us. We just need the political will to expedite them. Because another world is possible. It really is. A greener, cleaner, simpler world where we can live in harmony with nature instead of at war with it. Let's just take a few deep breaths and think about the wonderful opportunity we have now to rethink ourselves and to reset. Okay, I'm going to finish up now just with a few slides of my personal photo album, just to give you a taste of Extinction Rebellion, just a few words about how it works. We need all different sorts of people in Extinction Rebellion. I mean, there's extroverts, introverts, and loads of people in the middle. I mean, the guy rolling in the blood money demonstration is obviously quite an extrovert. I would never do that. And we need people who really, really do not want the limelight like that, because we have social media, we have writing, we have communication, we have all the artwork, the design and the making of the banners and the costumes, because everything we do is in-house. We need people who feel able to glue themselves on and be arrested, but for every one of those, we need 10 others who hold a flag or bang a drum or hand out leaflets. We disrupt and we chat and we share free dinners and we have a laugh. We're doing something very serious, but it is a very, very powerful bonding experience. It's always peaceful and it is always uplifting, and we make many, many new friends. Most people join through a local group and are organised locally. So I'll just show you some pictures from our local group. We are XR Wandsworth. Your local group will be your roots. They will ground you. Every local group is self-organising. We're all XR, it's all run by volunteers. You can see that we're holding our rather rubbish Tory council to account over air pollution, trees. We hold crisis talks, and we do a lot of outreach and try to talk to the public. We fly post. It's a very important and bonding and close experience, and we support each other and we listen to each other, and we are all in it together. From the local to the international, our movement in 3 years has grown rapidly. XR now is in 78 countries around the world, and there are over 400 groups in the UK. If you're not from XR Wandsworth, it's very easy to find your local group, or you can always start one up. Okay, just how to join in, practicalities. You don't need permission to get involved with XR. There's no joining up procedure. There's no subscription. You can visit the main website for all sorts of information on our demands, our values, events and groups. It's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can sign up for the UK newsletter on it. I would advise you to join if you're interested in your local area. If you're in XR Wandsworth, please put your name and email address and phone number in the chat, or direct message Lou, I think. And we will get you onto our lists, and you can receive our newsletter, and you will basically know what's happening. And then you can rock up. We can get you involved in specific things. But the most important thing is to come out on the streets in April. I've got anything else? Yeah. Oh, just a little reminder about April, I think. Sorry. Move my page. We're hoping it will be the biggest civil resistance campaign the UK has ever seen. It will go on for over a week. It will carry on indefinitely, actually, but the first week is the most important. Please book the week off work. I'm a teacher, I'm lucky, it's the Easter holidays. Get ready to be part of this whirlwind of change. We are at a turning point in history. Please come and be part of it. We need 1 million people out on the streets, peaceful but determined. Please join us. Please bring friends and family. Don't let this be you. Regret is a terrible thing. Took me a long time to join up with Extinction Rebellion. I missed the whole kind of first year, and all the time I was regretting not being in it. It's so easy. It feels so scary, but it's actually not. It's actually a very, very empowering thing. So back to my question, can we change the ending? Going back to the don't look up idea. Yes, we can. Let's take one more look at our hopeful slide. Let's end with this. We have everything we need on planet Earth. We can keep it. Please join us this April, and let's fight for it together. Thank you for your time.